Everyone, if you don't mind.
Thank you all for coming. Packed house tonight. I'm Brad. I am the community development planner for the city of Fitchburg. Thanks for coming to the open house for the Greenfield neighborhood plan. I'm going to start the presentation now and talk a little bit about the background to this planning process, and then I'm going to turn it over to Steve from MSA, the consultant that the city hired to help develop this neighborhood plan. So the background to why we're doing this plan for the Greenfield neighborhood now starts before the comprehensive plan was adopted, but led in the future development area process that led up to the 2009 comprehensive plan. This growth modeling exercise that was done during the comp plan set up 3 growth zones identified to accommodate Fitchburg's future development. You have greenfield growth zones, undeveloped land, often currently in agricultural use, located at the edge of the city's developed areas, but outside of the urban service area. Those are shown in green on this map here from the comprehensive plan. We have grayfield growth zones, lands that are already developed, or lands that are vacant and surrounded by development inside of the urban service area. And then farm field growth zones, which are intended for agricultural use outside of the urban service area, and it's not within one of the identified future urban development areas. So providing this kind of zoomed out context for why the Greenfield plan is there, why we're doing that now. The Northeast, the McGaw, and the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plans have been done. Sorry, not South Stoner Prairie. McGaw, North Stoner Prairie, and Northeast, and Greenfield is the next future urban development area adjacent to McGaw. And I also wanted to provide this zoomed out perspective to show that infill development in those grayfield growth zones is part of Fitchburg, a big part of Fitchburg's strategy to accommodating future growth. Some of the factors that went into the determination of these growth zones 15 to 20 years ago was the quality of, in a general sense, the quality of the agricultural land, the transportation routing, and the proximity to major north-south transportation routes, including U.S. Highway 14 and the rail line, and then utilities and infrastructure. A big part of what went into the future urban development areas was serving areas that can be served by gravity sewer and growing in a linear fashion that prevents leapfrog developing mainly because it's inefficient to provide city services in that way. 6 of the 7 greenfield growth zones that are shown here are along that north-south transportation corridor between the existing urban service area and the village of Oregon. Yeah, thanks. We put this in here just to show an example of, zoom out a little bit and look at the timing of the neighborhood plans. Within the comp plan, the city of Fitchburg has a maximum development of 75 acres per year within a 5-year flexibility period. So this figure 4.3 again comes out of the 2009 comprehensive plan, showing an example of what that phasing, the staging of that urban service area expansion could look like. So as you can see here, it's showing Greenfield as a longer-term development area, starting in 2015 to 2034 and going out all the way to 2049 as an example of what that development phasing could look like. The comprehensive plan was looking at accommodating Fitchburg's growth out through 2054. And another point here is that even after a neighborhood is brought into the urban service area, it can take years for that area to develop. A lot of it's dependent on the intentions of the landowners and the availability of services at the property. So what's the purpose of the future land use map that is in the comp plan? It's intended to reflect community desires and provide a guiding document for decision makers when property owners come in to request a zoning change. So that's when this future land use map is used. Greenfield here, as you can see, does not show future land use categories, or I guess it shows future land use categories of agriculture and rural residential predominantly, because the way the comp plan is set up is that the city does this neighborhood planning process involving the community to figure out what those land uses would look like in the growth zones. So now I'll turn it over to Steve to talk more about the plan purpose and yeah.
Thank you, Brad. So again, I'm Steve Trumlett with MSA Consulting on this project. We're also working on the South Stoner Prairie neighborhood plan that's also in process. Two other people from MSA are here. Hi, Bella and Vanessa. They'll also be around for the activities session as well as city staff. So what's the purpose of this plan? We kind of gave a little background of why this was even a project. But again, the purpose is to establish preferred land use plans that balance the growth while considering impacts and other community interests. So you see on the side of that in smaller fine print, not intended to have to read it all, it's not comprehensive. But the point is these colors on a map have more implications that is not just about how it the interest of the property owners and the character of that. We have to also think about how does this impact providing goods and services to the community at large and having accessibility to that? How does we provide housing for all? How do you protect woodlands, wetlands, open space, historic structures, landmarks? How do you serve it? And that all comes down to fiscal responsibility. So all those elements come into doing growth over time within a community. If you stick with just low density everywhere, that amount of cost to do all those other positive things or complement those growth things, it increases your taxes. And it's part of the city's aspect is to think not just about individual property of what's next to them, but also how this implicates fiscal responsibility as for the tax base. Outside of that, also, this might be a position to do that urban service area amendment. So I mentioned that there's those zones. There's the gray field, which is in the urban service area where sanitary service is already allowed to extend. Then there's Greenfield areas, which is the area that currently is not in the boundary to extend sanitary. So part of this process and what has been in process for McGaw and the other ones that have been completed is this is a submittal portion to that application at the time the city does submit. Why is there a no-build option? We heard this several times, well, many times throughout this process. And what I'm trying to hit home is that the no-build option is current scenario. This plan is not suggesting that change is imminent. It's saying a property owner should have the right to consider changing their use or developing their property within a framework of the approval process. Part of that approval process is to have a future land use map that says preferred is low density in this area or medium density, and what does that mean? If we do this process without actually determining what the preferred uses are, then this plan has no guidance. So it could still continue as it presently is for 10, 20 years, but it's in place in case someone does determine, well, I got 50 acres, I actually want to stop farming, or I have 5 acres and I want to split it into 2 lots. That's where this comes into play. And so that's the importance of actually having uses proposed for the entire neighborhood. And what implications are that on infrastructure long term? So we have some preferred land use scenarios, which would be the future land use map. Again, I've told a few people that they are different on purpose, wanting reactions to the amount of uses, the road connections that are shown, to kind of build towards a preferred land use map. Neither one of these are the exact answer. These are just a tool to get to the preferred. What is this scenario? Long-term vision for the area, supports identifying character and design parameters. So When you get up, there are some draft strategies. So if you took the survey, I mentioned this earlier, there are goals for the plan that are in that survey. Newly added are some draft strategies that gets to those goals. We are looking for some dots. If you feel like some of these strategies are you're strong in support, that will help in our discussions with steering committee when we bring these to them. And so that's part of the activities tonight. And then I mentioned identifying infrastructure needs. So you determine what kind of land use that may dictate how much potentially the land may be developed, meaning parking lots or buildings, which impacts stormwater. So then we'll be evaluating, once we get to a preferred concept, how this impacts stormwater, how does it impact the infrastructure needs to serve it long term. What is this not? It's not suggesting any of these properties are redeveloping at this time or in the future. It's not restricting landowners for using the property as it currently is, and it's not limiting farming or adding barriers to the current operations. It's purely a tool and guidance if someone were to want to develop their property further. Some of the input, this goes way back to even December of 23 when we had the open house. That was actually a combined open house with the South Stoner Prairie. We have 80 people at the presentation for that. Some of the comments we're hearing about the concerns about urban growth and traffic, keep Greenfield green, and responsible urban growth. There also was a chance to put comments on a map about issues and concerns of present day conditions. And some of the comments are there, and that ran from November of 23 to early January of 24. We have talked to several of the property owners that own larger portions of the neighborhood. And so some of the comments are both sides. Some say at some point they may do see development of the lands with low to medium density. Some said likely low density or open space. There are comments that says, I don't see development happening on my land in the near future. But again, this process isn't about we want to hear what wants to develop. It's just determining if stories change or people want to sell and develop, what is that guidance? There was 3 bubble diagrams that were out there for feedback. Comments we received presented it down to preferred of option B, the larger one you see on this map. Some interest even in A here. So A, you see that there is no business park. There are some higher density in the northeast, but then it goes down to lower density to what is called agrihood. That's something new we brought into this discussion from what we heard in the beginning of the process, the idea that I don't know if everyone's heard of conservation subdivisions, where you cluster residential together to preserve open space. In this case, you're preserving farming area, and so it becomes part of that little bit of a neighborhood. So that's an option for preservation of those areas long term. And then option B shows a potential interchange. There has been discussions with staff of long term. Maybe there is an interest of having another access point, and how does that, we're trying to be proactive on if that is to come forward, how does that impact the land uses being projected now? A lot of cases, that's usually not how this process works. You have concerns that happen after development's happened, and then you're trying to retrofit it in. We are trying to be proactive in considering how can this impact the neighborhood if it were included in the plan. So what did we learn? It was a very brief synopsis of the input. Keep Greenfield green, preference for low-density residential and farming areas, preference for maintaining current character of the neighborhood, and to promote the Fitchburg farming history and heritage. Concerns with curb and traffic and stormwater issues have come up many times about water and basements and other issues that have been impacted. So what has already changed in what you're seeing in these scenarios is lowered some residential density. For instance, one of the scenarios doesn't even have the higher density dark brown. The other one keeps it east of the tracks. Added additional open space buffering between existing neighborhood and new development. Preservation of significant open space. Addition of agrihood I just mentioned. Alternative configuration of Irish Lane to limit non-residential traffic through the neighborhood. And limiting intervention within the existing neighborhood. So goals and strategies. kind of had 5 buckets that we had on the survey, and what you'll see up here based on housing goals, job and growth and employment goal, quality of life, sustainability, and transportation. So you have a chance to get through them a little further up here, but I just want to give a little background. Again, for housing, additional housing options will be provided in the neighborhood, but will be strategically placed, designed, buffered to compatible with the existing Greenfield residents. Noted here strategies is establishing compatibility standards. So if there are lower density single family next to ultimately townhomes or a little bit larger multifamily, and if that is a preferred land use category and it's built, there would be additional standards of how that can be complemented down. Do there gables, break up the building, reduce height closest to the single family. There's a bunch of things we could include in this compatibility standards. Encourage development with a mix of residential densities, locating the least dense housing of that development closest to the existing residential lots. So if there's a development that actually has some townhomes and single family, it's suggesting the single family should be closest to the existing single family. And the third one is to maintain predominantly single family residential developments. So you could require a minimum number of single family lots within a plat based on the density. So like in low density, maybe there's a 75% number of those lots have to be single family. And then you go to the medium density, what is that minimum percentage? So I'm not suggesting what the percentages are here, but just the concept that each plat would be primarily single family, that working with the steering committee and also plan commission and council, what percentages should be put in place to say, all right, yes, so we're saying medium density in this area or medium high density, but we're proposing that that majority of that is single family. There is that kind of footprint. We showed images here of some of those housing single families that fit into these categories. Employment and job growth. Employment and goods services will be strategically located and connected to reduce the dependency on longer vehicle travel and to provide local and convenient options near the neighborhood. Strategies here is commercial uses and building forms will be compatible with the general neighborhood context. Second is encourage lands that support businesses that will meet the needs of local residents and that are not being met. And the last one is enforcing property maintenance in the business park and commercial areas to maintain the quality within the neighborhood. Quality of life, maintain open space accessible to all residents for recreation and neighborhood character preservation. So the 3 strategies here listed is design new residential areas around community gathering places. A variety of park types and sizes should be planned to meet the needs of Greenfield residents. So when you look at the preferred land or the land use scenarios that we have here, there's a lot of green that's open space. So it's not determining specifically that is park. Part of the next part of this process, if we get to a preferred land use, is, again, how does that impact where stormwater management should be handled regionally, potentially? So some of that green becomes stormwater management, but there are other areas that could be park. But at the same time, some of the orange areas or brown areas could ultimately have park, because every development per code has to provide a certain amount of parkland or fee in lieu of. I can't say how often they do that, but you're always required to provide parkland or dedication as part of a plat. And the third one is design attractive streetscapes with street trees and other landscaping clusters along major roadways. Sustainability. Consider the historic significance of the neighborhood, especially opportunities to preserve farm fields and implementation of low-impact development techniques for infrastructure design. Last point is a little bit of planner jargon there in engineering, but the idea is to cluster development to reduce impacting other areas. So there is a preservation of some farming and open space by how you handle a certain kind of development within the neighborhood, low impact. Strategies, strategically preserve natural lands and existing farmland that can complement neighboring housing developments. 2, provide adequate vegetative buffers between development and natural features. 3, integrate environmental corridors and open space into a comprehensive stormwater management system that provides key ecosystem services on a regular scale, regional scale, where applicable. So that's a lot of jargon. Again, the idea that a lot of times you see basins and it's designed to know where everything would flow and manage it so that once it goes, it slows it down, takes out all the bad sediment from it, so that when it creeps out ultimately down the way, it's been clean and it comes out at a lower rate. And then the last one is ensure site development and infrastructure improvement occur in area with least possible impact to natural environments. Another goal on sustainability is promote the use of diverse sustainable development practices, encourage the preservation of existing natural features and habitats, as well as restoration of new native plant communities. Two strategies here: encourage landscaping practices on public and private property that help to filter and infiltrate rainwater, and two, integrate environmental features into the neighborhood as a common open space for active or passive recreation, public gathering spaces, flood protection, and stormwater management. Transportation, this is the last topic. Support future regional transportation connections between Greenfield, the rest of Fitchburg, and the surrounding communities. We did put the disclaimer about there so that it's clear that we're also talking about such things as east-west additional connections through the neighborhood. That's in one of the land use scenarios that shows a road that would be north of Irish Lane. And then also the potential of an interchange. So some of the strategy related to that is develop a contiguous bike network through the neighborhood, connecting to the rest of the city and to the Dane County Trail System. Two is discourage cul-de-sac streets in favor of connected streets that provide transportation flexibility and increased safety. You will see that there are a couple cases that we saw a street dead end within the neighborhood that could be extended. Thinking about if the road was closed in Irish and there was EMS that needed to get there, the current route would have to go all the way around Kane to Byrne to Sayin. So that impacts how fast service can get to some of the cases that might be blocked from another road. Yes, that's not a case that happens every day, but that's what they're concerned about, and you would be if it was your house. Encourage alternative north, south, and east-west collector streets that shift traffic growth away from Sayin and Irish Lane. And the last one is continue considerations of a US 14 interchange between Lacey Road and County MM interchange to plan for regional transportation needs. Last slide on this. The goal is implement safe, convenient, and attractive streets for everyone, regardless of age, ability, or mode of transportation. Strategies are encourage proposed streets to connect to existing streets and intersections, provide sidewalks and bike facilities, if necessary, along streets to promote walkability and connectivity, promote narrower streets to increase pedestrian safety and to develop land more sustainably. And the last one is utilize traffic calming measures such as bump outs, traffic circles, speed tables, rapid flash beacons, where appropriate, to create a better street environment for pedestrians and cyclists. So I'm just repeating, I'm not going to go over it again, but I'm going to show you the land use scenarios here, but again, what it is and what it's not. Again, long-term vision, not requiring any change. There is a map up here about what the colors mean. Aggregates is generally 1 to 3 units density per acre. Low density is 2 to 5. So if you equate that to single family units, the idea is if it's 2, you would have half acre lots. That's 2 units, 2 lots that make up 1 acre. So 5 would be, there would be a 5th acre lots that still fits within that same category. Medium density, 5 to 9 units per acre. There's a new category that during this process that was adopted, approved by the city, that is a medium high density, that is 9 to 20. Kind of, I don't know if you've seen the graphic you see on the bottom of the screen, but the missing middle has been a term in planning for a while now about, in the old days, you would see some other unit types within neighborhoods that you don't see today that provides that different variability of rents, ownership. You just generally see single-family neighborhoods, and then you see multifamily neighborhoods. And see in the case of 9 to 20 units per acre, those kind of uses can be blended a little bit more, but there is a cap to that. It doesn't get too extreme, not extreme, but it doesn't get to the level that it's outside of the surrounding neighborhood. And then there's high density, which is just more than 9, and then mixed use. In our case, a mixed use in this neighborhood plan, it's saying it could be standalone medium to high density residential. It could be standalone commercial. It could be that the typical mixed use building vertically where you have commercial on the ground floor, residents above. All those are options in that area. Okay, take a breath.
While you're doing that, I'm going to add another thing to what this plan is not, because I've just fielded questions about it here. Another thing that this plan is not is it's not zoning. What this plan does is set up the decision-making guide for when a property owner requests a rezoning. When a property owner requests a rezoning, then we have to look at the future land use map, and it has to be consistent with the future land use map. So just wanted to put that out there as well, that this plan does not automatically rezone the properties in the study area.
Thank you, Brad. So scenario A here, you see that the potential interchange, again, that hasn't been too far of a conversation with DOT at this point. That is a long-term consideration, but we did want to see how that impacts road network and development. So you do see that, but in this case, it's shown where maybe long-term, if that interchange does come forward, the road network actually would close off at Irish there, and so it doesn't cost the tracks, and it would run north. Currently, there's a development, Hartung development, south of Lacey at that roundabout. Hartung development, Blaney Road is being built in there. This would be an extension of that. If there ever is an east-west road that connects ultimately from Nobel, from the neighborhood, through the farm fields, that could connect there. But we are showing primarily the connection to the north with a potential east-west. Then you see Business Park north of what is Irish Lane in the northeast corner. Residential areas in the northwest, west, and southeast, but with a good portion of that kind of a tan or almost white color. That is that agri-hood, again, that farming works there. Maybe clustering residential within it is also a plausible scenario. And then there is some orange, which is that medium density residential along the north and to the west side. That lighter brown is that medium high I was talking about, that missing middle piece. And if you get closer to looking at it, you'll see we even show potential alleys there. So again, that's usually the footprint that you'd see single family. So those are single family blocks in this concept. But I also say what it is and what is not of this land use plan. There will be policies suggesting the major roads called Collector A or Road A are ones we want to see the connections from A to B. Like in the case in the southern end, it's connecting over to Kane Road. That would be something we'll say we would want to see that road connection based on this land use scenario. But all those local roads that are not labeled is not suggesting that's how it would be built or developed. We're just giving you a patterning and character that's plausible within that density color. Scenario B here pushes that interchange a little bit further north of Irish Lane, creates a new east-west street that runs west and then could connect in this form back to Irish, or potentially it could continue on, but pulling that traffic off of Irish, but then connecting back into the neighborhood. Still looking at that orange medium density on the Kane Street into the north with that medium high, but this one is, it doesn't have that high density. There's no dark brown here. I should go back. I don't think I mentioned. In this one, you see south of Irish Lane on the east side past the tracks, the dark brown, that is high density. Orange is medium density. So there is some of that portion in this scenario there versus in this one shows Blaney going all the way through the neighborhood, east of the tracks, connecting all the way down to Byrne. That is Business Park, that purple there. There is some red at that roundabout by the interchange that actually, if you get closer, shows it could be commercial or it could be mixed use. That mixed use I talked about, that could be high density residential, it could be commercial by itself or a combination. Here is a little bit smaller amount of the agri-hood farm areas, but you do see in all cases on both concepts per the comp plan, if there are wetlands and there are some delineating, you can see like a light blue lines when you get closer to this. Those are potential or known wetlands. And in greenfield areas and growth areas outside the urban service area, 300 feet buffer zone from development. So that's why you also see some of these areas of no development is the city has already kind of determined that we want to preserve these areas and protect them. So some already got started. We did have that first 30 minutes, but the intent here is for another 30, 40 minutes. the chance, if you didn't get to or have more chance to talk to MSA as well as staff, and fill out some of this to give us some feedback to support moving forward. And then at 7:10, we would come back together and we could have public comment about, strengths and weaknesses of what we're seeing in these scenarios. There are the comment forms in back, sticky dots here to put a specific comment on the worksheet. I'll tell you about, if you're over there, what that means. Support for any of the strategies here with dots. There are hard copy surveys if you prefer to do that, if you have not done the online one, but the online is still out, and that'll be out, do I have it still here? To August 11th. So there's that QR code there. Also, you can go to the city's website. There's neighborhood plans for both the South Stoner and Greenfield where you can access this survey online. So with that, free to come back up here, ask questions, talk through it, and then at 7:10 we'll come back to have public comment. So we'll have public comment in a little bit. And so if you have a question, I can answer that personally.
Thank you all for coming this evening. We're going to go into the next phase of our open house where we will welcome public comments. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to introduce myself earlier this evening, but my name is Deanna Schmidt, and I am the city planner. And we are very fortunate tonight to have Mayor Arata Frada with us also this evening, just to the left of me. I welcome your comments. She is available too to hear your comments. So as we move into the next phase of our evening, we're going to handle this one a little bit different. We would like to break the public comments into two different sets. The first set, we ask you all, anybody who's interested to come up to the microphone, to come up and state your name. And you can tell us maybe a little bit if you're in Greenfield or not. And then offer a positive suggestion or opportunity or something that you like about the two different conceptual plans. So what we'd like to do, once again, is to start off with any comments that you might have that is positive or an opportunity or some statement that you would like to share. After that round, we'll ask anyone who's interested can come up to the microphone and then offer any complaints or suggestions for changes. Okay? Are there any questions about that? Because of the number of people in the room too, I will be doing a timer for us. We will just have 90 seconds for each one of those statements. Any questions? Please fill out a form, right? We have the forms to fill out. We will read over your comments too. And then also, Brad and I are available if you fill out your form and you would like to speak directly with us on a one-on-one person meeting. We would be happy to meet with you to hear with some more detail. So, but tonight we'll do 90 seconds each person at the microphone. So would anyone like to come forward and offer a positive comment or thought or opportunity with the neighborhood plans? Okay. We will then skip on to part B, and I will just ask anyone who would like to come up and offer a complaint or a problem or some thoughts about the neighborhood plans. Please say your name, and I am going to go ahead and just time us out.
Tell me when you've hit the timer.
Just a sec. We're all set.
My name is Tennille Ludwig. I live in Greenfield Park, specifically on East Hill Drive, where it hits Maloney Trail. I was encouraged when I walked around and looked at these because it felt a little bit like some of the things we had said had been heard. But when I went over and looked at the maps, I was more discouraged. It talks here about respecting the current character of the neighborhood, but I don't see that reflected in either of those plat maps. Both high density and business and commercial is planned in both of those plans to immediately abut the existing low density neighborhood. And I think you would go a long way to getting less resistance from the neighborhood residents if you just provided a little bit of a buffer zone of low density housing around the existing and didn't compromise the flow in the neighborhood by putting higher density roads running where they're not currently. All of that compromises the existing nature of the neighborhood and is going to be extremely distressing to the neighborhood residents. And that's part of why you're getting the feedback you're getting. The character of that neighborhood is why we moved out there very intentionally, to move to a place that's rural, residential, and quieter. And a lot of what we're seeing with the interchange being so close, high density abutting it, commercial abutting it, business development very near, will change the character of that neighborhood, and it doesn't respect the neighbors.
Thank you for your comments.
Mark Jones, 2266 South Saline Road. The city is going to develop a plan because they paid the consultant $150,000 to do that. And he's going to develop a plan. And the question is whether the Plan Commission and the City Council will adopt that plan or turn it back. And if this room is full, like the police building was, will they turn the plan back? Or will you just say to heck with the neighbors and do it anyway? I farm in the area. I'd like to keep farming in the area. I understand that some families would like to develop their land, but seem to be on the far end of it, which is going to require sewer to be run. If you area assess sewer, most of the Greenfield people cannot afford that. If you city assess it, probably still can't afford it. But it's just sad. You can achieve the goals by redeveloping the areas you already have. Brad and I disagree on urban sprawl. I see this as urban sprawl. And you can achieve the goals by redeveloping the areas you have. What's two-story could become six-story. And there's already sewer and water there. There's already bus service there. You can do it, but it's harder. It's easy to just mow down some cornfields and build houses. It's a lot harder to do the other.
I live on West Hill, and when I look at the plans, I just feel like the neighborhood was not respected. I look at someone who just built a mansion just off of Kane Road, and he's going to have apartments and high density, medium high density right next to him, and that just doesn't seem right. And I see another area that's slotted for medium to high density on a property of somebody who just with his two hands built his house with his own two hands just 2 or 3 years ago on that property. And yet that property is slated for, high density, medium high density housing. And I just feel like a lot of this is not respecting the neighborhood. It completely changes the character of the neighborhood. We moved out there to be in rural area. We can access everything in Madison within 5 to 10 minutes. I feel like the demand in Dane County is actually single-family homes. There's not very many of those in Dane County. And to think about maybe doing more of that in this community would preserve more of the character of this community. Keep new developments more in new developments and not a new development on top of an old development and kind of plow right over current residents that are already there. So.
Hi, my name's Julie Jones. I live on Tulare Court, which is in the Gold Development. And from what I've heard from everyone today, what we would like is to have our roads better paved and bike paths. Nobody seems to want the businesses in that area. Nobody seems to want the apartments. We all would just like to be able to get where we want to go if you bike or walk and preserve our neighborhood the way it is. We all chose to move there for a reason. My family, if sewer comes through, will not be able to afford to stay in our home. We will have to sell and we will have to move. And I've lived in Fitchburg my entire life. And I don't want to leave, but I'll have to if this develops in my lifetime.
I'm Paul Sutphin. I live on Arsh Lane, where the water floods over the roads when you get over 3 inches of rain. Nothing can be done until 20 years because it'll be all government funded. So the people here on Arsh Lane and Sain gonna have to buck water. But why are we even talking about this stuff when we have so much problems in Fitchburg? I drive a lot because I was a truck driver, and I'd like to know where people are living comfortable. We have some terrible, terrible, terrible living conditions in Fitchburg. Everybody knows where it is. They go past it every time they go on Fitchatchee Road. They go past it when they're over by Home Depot. We're letting that sector of our city turn into trash. But yet we're building these multi-billion-dollar apartments. I actually had a guy, he runs a crop duster. He was sitting over at Middleton Airport. He came across Fitchburg.
Paul, can you wrap up your...
Okay. He landed in Evansville. And the first question I asked him, did you go gaga Google over Fitchburg? For what? There's nothing spectacular. But I think we should just leave what we had going and just, tell these guys thanks for the job. But thank you.
Hello, my name is Dan Oley. I live at the end of 2386 West Hill Drive. One specific point and two general ones. Specifically, I'm adamantly opposed to the connector road leading from West Hill Drive to Kane Road. And there's others in the neighborhoods I know my neighbors have voiced their opposition to as well. It's not necessary. You can connect it to the other main roads, and it only increases traffic and decreases safety to the existing residents. And as a previous speaker noted, it's just not respectful to the look and feel and culture and history of the existing neighborhood. And generally, the survey itself, I have some concerns and questions with that I hope you consider. As one is the accessibility and the audience that you're reaching with that survey. A survey monkey and a postcard and and what I think is one language is not reaching all the residents appropriately. The questions themselves were fairly leading and forcing us into a scenario that we're not comfortable with, either of them. So to put our name behind one of these is disingenuous when we want probably a third or a fourth option. And lastly, if you look at the dots on the map and the feedback, there's concerns and a real trust issue of how our feedback is being distilled and incorporated into these maps. It feels like they're playing at the margins of all this strong feedback and a couple major points get distilled into a bullet point on a presentation, get buried in a footnote of a report, and show up as a little tiny buffer zone around existing neighborhoods. So I urge you to reconsider your plans.
I might say something one more, just real quick. One thing, I don't know how much you have actually thought about it, but there is a tremendous amount of wildlife in our neighborhood that we feel will be displaced. And we have a current woodchuck under our woodpile right now, but we've had a visiting skunk and a visiting possum. We have deers that travel right behind our property on a well-trodden deer path, as well as multiple packs of coyotes that howl throughout the night. And my husband also saw a bobcat 2 times in the neighborhood, and all of those animals would be displaced by a lot of the development that you're currently stating. So that would be one of our concerns. I think a lot of us have, is that we really appreciate and enjoy the abundant wildlife that we currently have, and it is a concern for us regarding development.
Hi, I'm Jess Soley. My husband already spoke for a lot of our thoughts, but I just wanted to say one thing that as a registered dietitian, I would strongly like to see the preservation of farmlands from a food security standpoint. And in the plans where there was an agri-hood, I believe you called it, I would like to see some expansion of that. If we're compromising on some things in the reality of this, I would like to see more of the agri-hood option to preserve some of the farmlands.
Hi, my name is Amy Schulz. I live at 2304 South Sain Road, so part of this Greenfield neighborhood. I just want to echo that I feel like the survey was on some level kind of a template that forces people to make a choice that doesn't really feel like a choice that reflects. It didn't reflect my feelings about these proposals. And I agree that I'm concerned that the feedback that we give is not going to reflect our true feelings. So in other words, we didn't necessarily have a choice of saying, it was like, do you prefer A or do you prefer B? Or instead of like, no, I don't prefer either of them. So I'm concerned that it will look to people that it was just like, oh, we had community input and they preferred A over B, but it didn't really reflect our true feelings about it. So that's one thing. And I would like to see the accountability towards our input. So in other words, if 90% of the community says we don't want this, we would like to have our representatives truly represent us and follow that. Also, I want to just say that we moved to our neighborhood 35 years ago because we like the rural feel with also close access to Madison. And with that in mind, if we had improved roads with better bike lanes, that would serve a lot of the needs to kind of keep our neighborhood rural with the rural feel, but also allow people easy access to places where they want to go. And okay, yeah, I just echo what the previous speakers have said. So thank you.
Mrs. Mayor, Brian, Deanna, Terry, thank you for your time hearing our concerns. My name's Andy Lager. I'm a lifelong Fitchburg resident. Now I'm going to talk to my people. I've been here 57 years, 24 years as a real estate appraiser. I know how this drill works. The developers are looking at larger parcels south of Irish Lane. I've been in the trenches all around this county. Just want to say the way this survey was, I totally concur with what people shared on that. Secondly, I don't feel the lines are going to change too much. I really want the lines to change, and I'd love to sit down and talk with you more about some lines on this crayon paper. But I'd like to do more digitally, that's more professionally, that might be a living document that we might have some more tangible documentation on. And just wanted to say it's very inspiring to see a community come together and have these discussions, how we've been plan A, plan B, and this is we. Here we are. Thank you for your time.
Go for my notes. I'm Amy Steger. I live on Irish Lane. The proposed plans for Greenfield give nothing to us as homeowners, landowners, and taxpayers. From what I see, they only take away. These plans will increase traffic, increase pressure on parks that are already well used, increase neighborhood water issues, increase homeowner expenses in terms of utility infrastructure and sewer connections, increase personal safety concerns, and these plans will decrease our open spaces. The only open spaces proposed in these plans are existing public lands or wetland areas that provide little functional use for the large population base proposed. This is in complete contrast to neighborhood and landowner desires. At a City Council meeting on May 22nd, which is available for viewing online, our city planner presented an update on the Stoner Prairie and Greenfield neighborhood plans. Unfortunately, the alders that represent our district, District 4, were absent from that meeting, which means that the voices of Greenfield were not represented in the discussion whatsoever. In that meeting, our city planner asked for additional time to allow feedback with Greenfield neighbors on this contentious project. City staff at least seemed to want to be a collaborative partner with us. However, there were some disturbing comments made in that meeting by multiple alders in Districts 1 and 2 and our mayor about our homes, our lands, our future traffic patterns, and our perspectives. I encourage you, all in the room, to watch the video and come to your own conclusions. I personally was appalled at some of the statements. Also during the meeting, the mayor asked about the opinion of the neighbors on the planned interchange at Irish Lane and Highway 14. The city planner could only state, there isn't a clear communication from neighbors on an interchange. Well, I would say that's because this process has not allowed for our opinions to be heard effectively. Outreach and direct contact with property owners has been limited at best. Meetings have been coordinated to minimize public response or direct our responses to meet the city desires, not our needs as taxpayers. They try to get us to say what they want to hear, not what we actually believe. In addition, the process for the steering committee has been disorganized and confusing. I am disappointed with this process by our city, its engineering firm, and city leadership. We need more time, more discussion, more research, and more collaboration together before we can support, let alone move forward with any development plan for Greenfield. Thank you.
There was other alders here earlier.
The only alder I can't come to my door said, we are touching Irish. This is just beautiful the way it is. I'm Erin Shetler. I live on 5178 Irish Lane, and will be part of the island that's created by either the road that goes behind us, the new road, or the reassigning of our properties. Across the street is represented by a different alder, and they maintain exactly as is. Our side, which I've never seen an alder through our neighborhood ever,
changes dramatically, becomes medium-high density housing. I feel bad for my neighbors across the street, and I feel bad for us because this isn't what we bought. This isn't how we live, how we want to live. What's created in this plan is high density or higher density housing that takes away the neighborhood that we have now. So I just feel it's a very disappointing process that we've never had any contact about any of this.
Dick Dern, 5178 Hilltop Road in Greenfield Park. The previous speaker was excellent, so I felt I had to come up here and make a comment. There's no rush to develop this property. I mean, once you develop it, you can't take it back and change your mind later. So that's point number one. Point number two is I'd like to see a lot more information on expenses, cost-benefit analysis. What's this all going to do to our taxes? It's only going to go in one direction. And the more high density, the more kids, schools, and property tax, school taxes, property taxes are biggest part is schools. So I think we need to slow things down, get as much involvement as possible. If you do it like, I'm a scientist, so if it wants to be rigorous and scientifically valid, you got to take your time and do it right. So I would agree, let's take our time and do it right.
I spoke for 20 more seconds. I'd like to just say that in our displeasure with this consulting firm, I propose that there's another consulting firm, another independent consulting firm that takes place. There's been a lot of displeasure how this was rolled out. It's just not worked very well with Plan A, Plan B, and canned responses. So thank you. I yield to the next speaker.
Hi, I'm Leslie Wright. I live at 2405 West Hill Drive. My husband and I moved here to the neighborhood 12 years ago, and we moved there because of a couple of reasons. One, it's a nice, quiet neighborhood. Two, my in-laws own the property at Cyene and Irish Lane, and it has been in their family for 60 years. Three, there were good schools here, and we were raising a family. We have 4 boys. One is grown. The other ones are in school. And they play in the neighborhood. They play in the street. They play at our yard. They run back and forth between Greenfield Park and our house. So there's lots of running in the roads and things like that. The neighborhood currently does not have sidewalks. It does not have bike paths or anything like that. It's an older neighborhood. It's nice and quiet. It is meant to be that way. The other residents like to walk their dogs. We like to walk in the evenings and go and visit with each other and stand close to the roads. If you use West Hill Drive as a thoroughfare between past Irish Lane and then all the way either into Kane or Wayland, as your maps are showing, it's going to become a thoroughfare. It's not going to become a nice residential area that it's meant to be. We have wonderful schools, we have wonderful areas, but what you're proposing on these maps does not work for the residents that currently live in these areas. Stopping Irish Lane stops to the west, stops people from getting to the grocery store in a reasonable manner. And then looking at proposing commercial, progress is going to happen, we understand that. But doing it in a way that it doesn't respect our neighbors, that's not okay.
We'll wrap whenever. Is there anyone else that would like to come up to the microphone this evening?
I just want to say to the people here, if you haven't had a chance to sign on the clipboards, this is for those of us that don't wish to see the proposed developments taking place. We're just trying to have better communication than we've received up until this point and to strategize. So I have those clipboards if you care to sign up. We'd love to have your input. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Deborah Moorhoff. I live on West Hill Drive. My husband and I and our daughter moved here in 2015, and, you know, nice neighborhood. Granted, there weren't a lot of kids at the time, but there's space to play. There's a park nearby, you know, great people around you. It's a community. You know, we've had parties on the yard with a bunch of families coming together. You need to respect the existing community. We have our little roundabouts in certain areas, and that is okay. You do not have to open it up and create thoroughfares with the existing community. If you want to develop, look outside of that community. Give us a buffer because we are already there, and be respectful. Another point I want to make is that there's a lot of looking into new development, extending sewer services and everything like that. If sewer is put into our neighborhood, we will not be able to afford that. It will cost too much. Same if you try to do sidewalks and gutter and things like that. So just leave some things alone the way they are. And the other thing is, I would urge the city to start serving the existing citizens that are paying taxes. There are roads that need to be fixed, and there are services that need to be taken care of. I mean, expanding is one thing, but it seems like Fitchburg is consistently expanding without considering the after effects. You know, water issues, lack of enough police department, you're creating traffic issues with denser housing. So please think ahead and make better plans, because what's been happening is not working.
That's your timer. Yeah, sorry.
I got just a quick second. Good things, really good speakers. Appreciate the opportunity to give you feedback. Those are all good things. The fact that something's being thought of and being brought up to everybody else, that's a really good thing. The few things that I feel like have not been really addressed, and I think Dick Dern said that we should really think about, or a cost analysis. Andy might have said that too. I don't barely ever see a Fitchburg police officer in our neighborhood, but that's a good thing. I don't really care to see a Fitchburg police officer in a neighborhood because we don't need a Fitchburg police officer in a neighborhood. But when we did need one, they were there really fast. So bringing more people around us is inevitable. I understand that. But we really need to understand that when you add the kind of population you're about to add to a very low population area, you're going to bring a lot more unwarranted or unwanted excitement. Typically, we're a thoroughfare for the police officers to go from one area of the city to another, but we're not the place that they land. And I hope to keep it that way. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you.
Peter Opperman, 5190 Irish Lane. I have just a couple questions. One is, I noticed there's a ton of dots on the sustainability goal saying limit development in prime agricultural areas and farmland preservation areas as identified by the comprehensive plan. I interpret that to mean don't overdevelop the ag lands in this neighborhood. But the way that's written, it actually says as identified by the comprehensive plan, which would say do develop the agriculture areas in this neighborhood because the comprehensive plan didn't identify these areas as prime farmland. Can somebody address whether those dots mean we want you to develop the ag here or we don't want you to develop the ag here?
I can't speak to the specifics of that right now.
Okay,
We're
well,
just
I think
taking
that's a
public
good
comment.
indication of, I think some of the feedback mechanisms here are a little bit ambiguous, because if the city's going to interpret that to say, limit development in prime agricultural areas, and the city's saying this isn't a prime agricultural area, I think that maybe is misrepresenting what people intended to put with those dots. The other question I have is just how some of the survey responses and the sort of feedback is being distributed, if we're going to get a full listing of all comments or just the consultants in the city's interpretation and summary of those comments. So if you could share a little bit about how the outcomes here are being distributed, that'd be helpful. Thank you.
We're taking notes, and this evening, this is an opportunity for public comment. Of course, if anyone has, including you, Peter, have some specific questions that Brad and I can answer, please reach out directly.
Okay, then I guess my public comment is please publish all of the survey results in their raw data form, not a summary as interpreted by the city or the consulting firm.
I'm Ravina Horner. I live at 2411 West Hill Drive. And I think before we do any more expansion in the Fitchburg area, we need to take care of some of the issues that we already have here. And I think some of the stormwater runoff problems that we have right off of Irish Lane was just a perfect example. We're having to pump it out onto the ditches and get it away from that neighborhood. I think that's a prime example of what needs to be, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in our neighborhood now before more expansion.
Sorry, and I just wanted to your point about the water issues and runoff issues, I think some of the plans, as you guys are planning it, do not take that into account. I don't think there's any kind of study or consideration as to the water issues that you may be causing. So there should be additional studies and reports on that to make sure that you're not making the situations worse.
My name's Dave Willow. I live at 2304 South Sain Road. Been out here for 35 years. And the area kind of that, at like the Curry Court, Sain Road area, that's just north of our property. And, you know, that area is typically always flooded. And I know our groundwater in where we live is probably about 30 feet down. That's how, you know, so our sump pump usually runs continuously. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in here that have that same, you know, feeling or experience. The other thing is that at the end of Curry Court, there's nowhere for the water to go. That it has to go underneath the railroad track in order to leave and hook up to, I think it's Murphy Creek. Is that the one that's? And, you know, we've complained about this for years. Nothing gets done. You know, so.
Dick Dern, Hilltop Road again. So as we talk about medium and high density, you want to think about parking lots, and parking lots has a lot to do with runoff. And especially this year when you get 3-inch rains, it amplifies the issue. So I think another consideration, as just mentioned, is storm sewer and water runoff and everything related to that.
We're right next to that water
We're
ditch.
going to ask you to, if you've already spoken once or twice, that's sufficient. Is there anyone else that hasn't spoken that would like to speak?
My parents taught me. I've been here for 40 years and I've seen the changes. And they happened gradually. I didn't like them, but I got used to them. But the one thing that really irks me is you don't maintain what you've got. And you do that before you start building something new. And I've complained about this before and nothing gets done. The roads are typical around here. It's like, you need to think about that. Think about those things. I just don't know where you're coming from when you want to expand things and you can't even take care of what you've got.
Johnson, 5170 Irish Lane. I'd just like to echo the stormwater and bike path concerns. I think if those two things could be incorporated into these development plans, that would be important. For looking at future development, how do those fit in there? And I think I just want to add that. Also, the plans do look like more of what's going on Lacey and Cyan. And there's one house with a 3-car garage, and it's like a nice big house, and it's wrapped around with apartments behind it. We are right off the intersection of Cyan and Irish, and I don't eventually want to see something like that. And I think other people have spoken to the fact that the new areas on here seem to be very high density, and what is considered low density is actually more dense than what we already have in Greenfield. So those are my points. Thank you.
I'm Dwayne Craig at 2404 West Hill Drive, and I would like to yield my time to this lady here, who is my neighbor, because I think we have the same interests. That's all right.
I was just going to mention the water in our neighborhood. I live right next to the ditch that fills when there's a lot of rain, and it comes through our back neighbor, comes from Irish Lane, right through property that you have slated for housing, and then it has filled over probably 10 times this year, approximately, and has gone over its banks as well. And I know one year when we had a lot of water, we even had a house just two doors down whose basement was just flooded from the septic backing up from being flooded with flood water. And our current neighbor has water that goes through their backyard as well. So water is a significant area in this neighborhood, and that really needs to be considered when you're doing development, because more pavement is going to create less drain off, and it needs to be addressed.
Mike Connor, 2315 South Cyan. The water that they're talking about fills my ditch. This last one was just about over my driveway again. It's not moving. It's not going where it's supposed to go. And there's only one person lower than me on Cyan Road. This has got to be taken care of. The other point I want to ask, is there anybody here that doesn't like either of the plans? Would you please raise your hand? Take it to heart. We don't want to be Madison South.
Well, I thank you all for your input this evening. Once again, I'll open the invitation, reach out to myself, to Brad, we would be more than happy to meet with any one of you or individually or as a group. We certainly intend to collect all your input and share that with the steering committee and council. I don't have an exact timeline for collecting all of the input. We will put together this evening's input, we'll put together the survey and work on, I'm not sure.
I think the next steering committee would be where we are working, sharing all this input, getting it compiled. It'll be after the survey closes. It's not scheduled yet. Was that your, did I miss another question that you had?
Could you come up to the microphone, please? Thank you.
Sue Moran. I live at 2461 South Sain Road. But I think it's extremely important to have transparency in what you're doing. And I think that's been lacking. And I don't like to see summaries. I want to see some of the comments. I want to see how many people responded. I want to see the data. So I would appreciate that. Thank you.
You guys spoke for the
Yeah.
Okay. A quick question. I had a wonderful conversation with an alderperson yesterday, and the interesting thing was when they looked at our whole development and our plans and so forth, they were saying something's really missing here. The public input of public input, what percentage could that be? 30%, 40%, 20%? We don't know what percent we are, but we're 100% here, and we don't know what percentage we represent. We know we've got decision makers that don't live here. So what percentage are we, and when are we going to know that? Thank you.
Can I ask a question? When you say decision makers that don't live here, who are you referring to?
Okay, sir, you're in the green shirt. I'm sorry, you're doing technology tonight. You may or may not live in Fitchburg, but you're not a decision maker. It's Brad, right? You live in Madison. Deanna, you do not?
We're not decision makers.
Right, but you don't live in Fitchburg.
We are not a decision maker.
I know, you asked me, Mayor, with all due respect, the city planner, Deanna, does not live in Fitchburg. All of the city building inspectors do not live in Fitchburg. All of the building inspectors, assessors, do not live in Fitchburg. Assessors, building inspectors, planners.
What's your question?
So the question was, decision makers, who lives here and who are the decision makers? And I said, your question, Mrs. Mayor, was that I said the decision makers don't live here. I think, are you a Fitchburg resident?
Of course.
Okay.
To be a mayor, I have to be, and
Yes.
I have lived here for 20 years, and the
So-
decision makers is the council.
Yes, thank you. And that was an assumed yes. But Mr. MSA and his staff, none of the, do you live in Fitchburg? So there's your answer. So the decision makers, that was the question. Does that clarify?
You're saying the people planning everything aren't.
Yes. So if we're planning, yes, that was the question was, what percentage of a voice do we have that live in Fitchburg when these individuals don't live here? Is that clarify? So that was my concern. And what percentage do we have in decision making where these lines get drawn? And, I've got 24 years of residential appraisal experience, so I'm happy to help with those questions.
I want to clarify something, so the decision makers is the council and the mayor, is not the staff. The staff support and advise the council. And we don't have any residency requirement for people to live and work in Fitchburg. So
I want to clarify that because it happened to all of the city. It's not only happening in Fitchburg. Like I don't, I live in Fitchburg, but I work in Madison. So I imagine most of you have the same thing. So that's it. I want to clarify that because they are not this. They don't decide it about this plan. The council will decide about this. So.
What last part of that final question?
Okay, fine.
Which was the last part of that final question was, if we don't have a percentage, and they're part of the decision-making process, right? The consultant, the council, right? The council, but they're advising the council, and they don't live here. They're advising the council, and they don't live here. So what percentage do we get to advise the council other than that? I mean, what percentage do we get in the weight of this, the weighted factoring of this?
This is why I am here, sir, and some others are here because we are here to listen to you because we are going to have to make a decision eventually, and we are here. As a mayor, I want to say thank you to all of you for coming today, for coming to all the meetings. I appreciate your feedback, to your candid and very honest feedback. And even though maybe we can disagree in some of the issue, but I listened, okay? And I want to say thank you for that. And I am here, and we have Alder Dave Herbst over there. We are here to listen because we are going to bring this input to the council. And the council, some of the members, they work full time, and maybe they cannot be today, but they are going to be watching the meeting today. So those are the people that are going to make the decision. They don't make the decision. They advise the council with all this process.
Mm-hmm. So just one last question is a lot of us are kind of rural subdivision and mixed use. Like we're in the in between the corn stalks. So I just wanted to share that how many on the council, because a lot of people don't know. How many on the council?
We are 8 people plus the mayor, 9.
So 9 total people are drawing the lines, is that correct? After the consultation? I'm seeking understanding here.
The process will be when the process is finished, I don't know when it's going to happen, then it's going to go through several commissions. It's going to go to Plan Commission, it's going to go to Public Works, I imagine. It's going to go to, what else? I don't know, transit,
parks.
resource conservation, parks. So this process is going to run through commission and committee. Those commission and committee are formed by residents like you.
Yes.
So a lot of people, they will have the opportunity to hear about the plan and to make more comments or additional, revision to the project. And eventually, when it goes through all the committees and commission, it's going to reach out to the council to make the final decision. This is the process. Yes. With most of I would say with everything that we build in the city, every resolution, ordinance, this is the process. We have a very transparent and democratic process here in the city of Fitchburg.
And yes, the last question was, and I'm done here right now, but how many council people are here tonight? And are they required to watch this in entirety, like a mastery session, like check the box, I answered these questions, that I watched this entire proceedings today? Thank you. Thank you.
Common council members, as I mentioned to you, most of us, we have a full-time job, and this is our part-time, work at the city. Some of them, they are not, some of them, especially some of your council members in District 4, one of the person has a business meeting today. She couldn't be here, but it is the responsibility of every council member to review the meetings when they miss the meeting. So I am not going to tell you that I'm going to say, hey, you have to watch the meeting. Everyone is responsible and accountable for their own actions. But the council is aware of this process. Some of the council members have been participating or coming for maybe half an hour. But yes, if you want me, I can send an email to them and say, for sure they're going to watch. I'm going to tell them to watch the meeting today because we receive a lot of feedback, and I want my council to be informed, educated, because when they are the one who is going to vote for this plan. And the more information they have, the more feedback they have, the better.
So
You can put them over on the table there as you leave.
I want to add my voice to the one that says, please emphasize transparency in this process and make the collated comments available publicly. You have to collate them for your council. It's not a lot of extra effort to share them for those of us who've asked.
You can do an open records request for any of the surveyor data.
Oh, I love that idea.
Somebody get a comment over. Otherwise, it doesn't show up as far as transparency, doesn't come up on our video. So if you do have a comment, please just ask for the microphone, because we want to make sure that everybody's heard. So someone did have comment over here about open records request, I believe.
Yeah, I'm the least afraid to speak in public of anybody in the room, probably. What I said back there, not on the microphone, was please, I encourage you to promote transparency in this process. And as others have suggested in the room, make the collated version of all of the comments and the number of comments that were repeated available to the public. You are probably going to have to collate the comments for the council anyway. It's not a lot of extra effort to provide them publicly. And we could do an open records request, but we shouldn't have to.